there are many steps, and my point was that, you know, a specific fund was not the final answer. To use a very social worker term, we're on a journey. We are on a journey. It's a big, fat, juicy journey, and we have to go there. But the biggest question for us, and it's picking up on what Emma said, us as disability community, disabled arts, our allies, is to address our own internal barriers and talk about what we're going to do to liberate our people, because now we have a chance with a dedicated scheme with all its faults. Don't get me started. But anyway, it's not a truly socialist scheme, it's an economic one, but you can talk to me about that later. But it does give us an opportunity to liberate people who are so disenfranchised, who will never be at these things, who will never be at even applying for arts funding. They wouldn't even think about it. They don't even know the arts exist. They don't even know sushi exists, for God's sake. They get to choose from 3 bain-maries of lasagna, spaghetti bolognese, or something else with mince and pasta. And, you know, they live in congregate care. They don't have any family left that knows them. These are the people that we as a culture and a society, and as political activists, because we're artists, we're activists, have to liberate through the mechanisms that we have. One of those is arts, the other one is the up-and-coming scheme, and we have to make sure we reach in and get those people and pull them out of the 19th and 20th centuries.
You just re-energised me as an activist in about 30 seconds. I'm ready to go.
Start tweeting.
We've got a question from Janice Florence.
Thanks. My name's Janice Florence and I'm the Artistic Director of Weave Movement Theatre, and it's become a much more deep and meaningful discussion since I first wanted to ask this question. But sorry, I'm going to go back to money matters. And just to explain, Weave Movement Theatre is an inclusive physical theatre company based in Melbourne, and over the past 16 years we've produced 11 high-quality productions which have featured in mainstream venues and festivals, and we've collaborated with well-known Victorian performance artists and had critical reviews in the arts media. We've evolved an innovative physical dance theatre form which draws on the creative talents of many performers with and without disability, and provided a platform for artists with disability who would face many barriers entering into mainstream theatre or dance companies. So I guess I'm asking a question about funding a bit further down the track, where funding for our work seems harder and harder to get. And some of the situations we face are that most of our funding is project funding, and funders have often said, your artistic standards are high, we like your proposal, but we can't afford to fund you anymore, so this will be after about 3 or 4 times of having project funding. We have other projects to fund, you'll need to look elsewhere. And so we gradually go through many funding sources in the same way and experience the same thing. Cast adrift after a number of projects have been funded. Or funding bodies will sometimes seem to say that they have funded one disability project, so they don't need to fund another one. Do we have to cut off all these years of learning and accumulated knowledge and disband this unique platform for artists with and without disability? Because it seems that we could be coming to that point. Where do we go from here?
I'll have a go. Tony might want to. I think he's glad I've volunteered, actually. The situation you've described is not, apart from one point that you made, is not unique to where we are with overall funding and, you know, the arts sector generally. Although over many years, until about a couple of years ago, there'd been some, significant increases in overall money. I mean, everybody knows times are very tight at the moment, and I think It is this issue of an organisation that does good work and perhaps not being able to get certainty around funding for a period of time that gives you the ability to plan 2, 3, 4 years ahead is clearly a big issue. And that's one of the reasons that we are going through a process to rejig our organisation's investment programme, to open it up to organisations that weren't in it before and create longer-term funding agreements within that. Now, the overall pot, and if the Minister was here, I'm sure she'd reiterate this, the overall, apart from, the overall pot is what we've got out of the last budget, and it's going to be interesting for us to just see how that overall situation lands. But what we've tried to do with the rejigging of that programme is, with the organisations that were on, say, annual funding and do need that certainty, to try and bring some of them into the programme. So, what you've described is a very difficult situation, and, it's... I mean, I think you said that most of your money comes from private sources, or from...
Well, it's often Australia Council. It has been Australia Council, it has been some from Arts Victoria, local government, sometimes philanthropic funds.
So you have a mix. But I think that one of the things you were really saying is that, and it goes back to an earlier question, is this business of, well, we've done one disability thing and we can't do another is just ridiculous. And that's one of the things about what we were saying earlier about access regimes fixing up some of those issues and getting those things right, rather than necessarily having something that's specifically for disability. So I think I'm only giving you half an answer, because I'm sort of giving you a sense of some of the issues that we're facing in trying to address some of the issues that you've enunciated.
Yeah, and I can probably add to that. I mean, the average of the applications that we receive, the average success rate across all our areas is about 20%. So 80% of the people that walk through our door are disappointed. And after time, obviously people that continually apply, I mean, from the feedback we've received, give up. This has been, acknowledged over many years, and as part of the review that the government did into the Australia Council, and it acknowledged that this gap was a gap between what the peers identify as excellent work and worthy of subsidy and support, and what is actually funded and not funded should be reduced. And we call that unfunded excellence. And again, through the government's Creative Australia National Cultural Policy, some additional resources have been provided, some $15 million a year, to address this gap, to reduce that level of unfunded excellence.
I think we've got a few more hands, quite a lot more hands. This way? Sorry, what? Sorry. I'm not positioning myself well. Okay, we've got a question over here.
My question goes, I guess it's related to the issues of privilege. I've got a psychiatric disability and a learning disability, and I also work as a disability support worker with adults with intellectual disabilities. And one of the things I'm thinking as I've listened tonight is that it's not just about the people themselves that you've got to educate. You've actually got to educate disability support workers, because I actually think they are, some of them, some are, an obstacle in themselves, to put it bluntly. The people I work with, like I work with people who are talented dancers and singers, and who would get so much out of participating in the arts, but they can... Basically, you can take them to a movie and tick the box for cultural access, and that will satisfy everyone. I mean, and that's the way it is. This is not the... and it's not the... I don't even feel like I've moved into the 20th century with my work, I have to say. I find it very... And the problem is that the people who are delivering the services, they're a long way from people who develop policies, and often the people who develop policies and are in a managerial position have no idea what's happening at the level of service delivery. So I think if you can, the more you can improve the understanding of the people who are on the cliff face workers, especially for people with intellectual disabilities, the better. And I guess my question is, how do we empower people who can't talk and who can't maybe have limited intellectual capacity? How do you empower them to in this kind of an environment?
I wonder if Jade, you might... Oh, Catherine, if you...
I've got a quick answer, and I agree with you. It's about empowering the workers to activate their morals and their values and not be so institutionalised in their responses to everything. And that's not having a go at workers, because they are trapped in an institution that has its beginnings and values in the late 19th, early 20th century. So we've got a lot of work to do there, and that's where we can look to the UK around examples of people taking individualised packages and making individual lives. We can look to Canada for similar things. We can also look to the US for the way they use corporate philanthropy and to liberate some of the strings that are attached to government funding, is to use corporate philanthropic models to work with corporates and to go after them. And I borrow this from my friend Julie McNamara in the UK, who says go after their mitigation strategy. If they cause major disability in the world, go and get them to cough up their mitigation funds to the arts and say, well, you're a major cause of disability, so give over some of your cash. And this is borrowed from Julie, and she's the one with the balls to go and ask for that cash. So think about it. Is it a strategy you want to use? But that's one answer to your question. Something else I wanted to state, Jade.
So we do have more time for all these hands up, but I do just want to ask Jade, because Footscray Community Arts Centre I always think is kind of a good news story among mainstream arts organisations, because you do have so much disability arts work in your program. What are the ways how have you achieved that? How do you guys support the showcasing of work by artists with disabilities so successfully?
I'm not quite 9 weeks in the job, but I'm about 9 months in the job. And, our Art Life program's been running for about 21 years now, so I'm sure it's gone through many, many iterations, good, bad and indifferent, through that time. But I will say that there's a whole lot of energy that goes into not assuming. And I think that's probably critical, particularly in relation to your point also around working with disability support workers or anyone, that you should never, ever assume that you think you know, or you might even know what people want or the road people want to go down creatively, socially, culturally, politically, any of that stuff. And particularly for us, for those who don't know, we work with 40 adults with intellectual disabilities every day, and there are 3 professional ensembles that sort of come out of that group, but a range of other kind of opportunities that happen. I've got this lovely dog on my shoe, so no, I was stuck to him. So, look, I think it's about not assuming, and if someone doesn't have the ability to necessarily be able to communicate in that moment, it's about taking really active steps to use alternative methods of communication, working with the Communication Rights Advocacy Organisation, providing support to disability support workers to understand further what they need to be doing. And look, it takes time and it takes resources, but at the end of the day, it's really about choice and making sure that people have access to that in every forum possible.
Sorry.
Emma, do you have something?
I was just going to say, I think the biggest transformations I've seen for support workers who maybe haven't had the experience in terms of, you know, giving people that choice, that level of choice and control, has been when they've seen people transform through their participation in arts and culture. So if they have a good experience as a participant or as a contributor, which I like to say, to their arts and cultural destiny, that I think can actually change the perspective of the support worker, because what they're actually seeing it in action. It's not a philosophical concept that they're having to come to grips with, or a change of to their way of thinking, which they've held for maybe 30, 40 years, which is no fault of their own. It's actually something they can tangibly see and grasp. So I think the art is the tool here, and I've seen evidence of that many times.
Absolutely.